Hello, Nick. Yeah, I just thought I'd put together a quick video of just a few bits and pieces that you might want to consider. I know that obviously you're an expert in these things, but I've sort of come at this from a different angle in having learned to draw on the iPad first and then embraced paper second, as it were. But I like to do my thinking on paper and then engineer the artwork using the iPad. But I'm just going to show you a few bits and pieces that I found really, really helpful. And so I guess a lot of it's about speeding up the process, or giving you options along your process. It's definitely different, but yeah. Anyway, here's what I've got. Okay, here we are. This is the Procreate on iPad Pro. I've got a 3rd generation iPad Pro, and I tend to work at double HD, I guess. So let me see. That is what's that? 3840 by 2160, and that gives me on the 3rd generation gives me about 60 layers, right? But with the new M1 chip and the next generation of the iPad, apparently at the same size you can get over 200 layers. So depending on what size you're working at, I like to work at double HD because that means if I draw something really small and end up using it or ending, it's still high res enough to be used on the web, because essentially most of my stuff is not for print, but it's for web. But I'm still trying to make sure that it's super sharp. So aiming for 144 DPI, I guess. Anyway, I usually do my thinking on paper first, and then essentially just take a photograph into it. And usually I'm trying to explore as many different ideas as possible. So then I end up sort of working up these ideas. And so being able to bring in photographs obviously is really nice, and then just sort of reducing the opacity and then sort of drawing over them. I really like the way Procreate, if you can see on the left hand side here, Procreate allows you to sort of store your sort of favorite thicknesses of particular brushes, which I guess is maybe quite normal, but I use that all the time. And then obviously I'm just sort of drawing over stuff, and then trying to take it further and whatnot, as you would expect. Now, what are the things that sort of really work for me? Do you know what? So things like being able to draw, if I was going to put this in a panel, for example, being able to draw, if you sort of draw and hold, it sort of snaps to a particular line, but as you can see, it still feels a little bit hand drawy because of the thicknesses of or because of how the brush gets rendered, I guess. So I really like that. And obviously you can go further. You can go further than that if I just undo that. And obviously, if you draw like a square, it'll snap to that sort of irregular. And if you put your finger down there, it'll like give you a perfect square that then you can resize. And I have to say, I find that super helpful, because especially with circles, and it's giving you what looks to me like a hand drawn, a little bit rough and ready circle. But I suppose it's well proportioned. But it allows you to sort of build things out of shapes, which I tend to think in shapes, think like an engineer, I guess. So I find that really useful. And then obviously just be able to, to be able to fill those shapes is also super useful. Another thing I use all the time. In fact, if I just I'll just pick up. I'll just fill those as white. But to be able to, let's create another layer here. To be able to draw with clipping masks, I find super useful. So if I just take away the background here, you'll see my my two shapes again. And then let's just choose a slightly different brush. To be able to then sort of clip stuff on top of that, I find is super useful whenever you're doing giving something a bit of, you've got this nice sharp edge, and whatnot, and obviously being able to sort of stack those on top of each other, and then I guess just being able to have blends in there as well. So in fact, I'll just take the saturation out of that, so and brighten them up a little bit, that layer, so it just becomes a little bit of grey. And then let me just clip on top of that, I don't know, add a bit of something there. I've done that the wrong way around. Oh, let me just add that on top, and you can sort of see that you're sort of building let me just remove that thing from underneath. You're sort of building layers on top of each other, and you use that all the time. Another thing I use all the time is Alpha Lock. So let's see, if we go down here and if I just switch on Alpha Lock there, so say I just want to make these bolts coming out of this guy's head a different color. Let's make them nice and red, rusty red, and I have turned on Alpha Lock, and you can just sort of see that the background of that layer has sort of changed, and obviously it'll give you a really nice alpha there with no little bleed or anything like that. So I found myself using that Alpha Lock quite a lot as well on there. Let me see, what else do I use in terms of doing comics. Procreate brought out this little, just right down the bottom you can see a page assist, right? And I have to say I use this all the time as well, and something you can turn on and off. So it's just sort of here, page assist, but it essentially allows you to nip backwards and forwards through groups of layers, and because I'm usually sort of working with lots of different ideas at the same time, so if I sort of just nip into a different a different Procreate file, you can see down at the bottom here I've got just a few different silly ideas, usually featuring cats, but they're really just groups of layers. So I just, instead of having to turn things on, turn things off, whatever else, it automatically just allows you sort of to nip through those, and I find that really super helpful, I have to say as well. Let me just nip back here to my strange person. And then lastly, just to be able to have a grid going on in the background. Let me see, where's my, so there is a little drawing guide there, and allows you to edit the drawing guide, and you can obviously choose sort of isometric stuff, or create a sort of a vanishing point perspective, and that sort of malarkey. But what's nice is there's a little assisted drawing function too, and I've just changed the color of that, so let's actually, so we can see it. Lovely. And then, so let's see, I'll need to take that off Alpha Lock, but so we've got this assisted, and it essentially then allows you to, it'll only draw on or next to the lines. And I find that pretty helpful if we want to just do a quick little isometric, drawing, and it still feels like it's hand drawn, which is what I really like about it. Obviously you can see that it's pretty much following the grid, but still retaining that sort of genuineness. I really like that too. Anyway, those are just a few little things. There's a whole bunch more obviously the Procreate can do that you probably already know about, but just as in terms of drawing little cartoons, I just find that those features are dynamite and just allow me to create things really, really quickly. Okay, good. So hopefully that was helpful. Undoubtedly, you will have to change your process if you move to a different way of working, right? Or think about layers differently, just because a different app will give you different tools at your disposal, right? But it's definitely worth an experiment and a look. And I'd probably encourage you to get the best, most powerful iPad that your budget will allow you to do, which is the general rule of buying any new kit, I guess. I have to say, I've owned many iPads, but never needed the cellular version of the iPad. Just never needed it, and so I think probably use the iPad in a slightly different way if you need that sort of always connected to the internet. I'm always within use of Wi-Fi or tether to my phone, really. So I just don't need that to spend that extra cash. But anyway, there you are. Hope that's helpful. Okay, bye.